cordial, and I thought of her as a decent person. As you know, I submitted an affidavit to you. Ever since this committee released that affidavit to the press has come to me saying, would you talk about that affidavit? And I said, no, I'm an attorney. I do not feel that's appropriate for me to discuss anything that's going to be discussed by this committee before the committee has an opportunity to discuss it with me. Ted Koppel's office called and said, would you be on Nightline? Tom Brokaw's office called. Derek Utley's office called. I even got a call a couple of days ago saying, well, if you won't talk to us before you testify, will you show up on a Good Morning or Today show after you testify? I'm not going to do that. I am sickened by the fact that the best people, some of the best black people in this country, some of the best people in this country are participating in such a destructive process. But I respect the fact, Senators, that given the severity of the charges, you had no choice. There are many things that I could say. There are many things that I will say. I stand behind the affidavit that I submitted to you. And I look forward to the time when this body and your colleagues vote on the nomination of Clarence Thomas. And I very much hope that you confirm Clarence Thomas. But there's one other thing that I want to say before I wait to respond to your questions. My wife and I, my wife is here behind me, were at a Thai restaurant last night with a friend of ours who had flown in from the country, from Africa to do some business with us when this all blew up in all of our faces. Another one of our friends came up to us and said, John, I just want to look at somebody who's stupid enough to stand up to the world and say, here I am, throw stones at me, throw knives at me, throw rocks at me. Since you released my affidavit that I submitted to you, to the press, we received a number of telephone calls, 40 in 2 hours immediately after. Most of them have been positive, but some of them have been negative, and some of them have been threatening. One of them was a man who left a message that was very simple. Boom, 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 click. And he was not imitating the ever-ready rabbit. I'm from Texas now. Those are supposed to be gunshots. Last night at that same Thai restaurant, a woman came out as we were leaving and said, shame, 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 shame. And I said, excuse me, do you know any of the people involved? Do you know Anita Hill? Do you know Clarence Thomas? Do you know me? She kept saying, shame, 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 shame. I said, do you know any of the facts? And she said, you know nothing about PMS. And I can't stand any man who says a woman is unstable. I said, but do you know anything about the facts? And she said, and I'm sorry I have to say this, she said, put your penis back in your pants. This is somebody I'd never seen before, somebody I do not know, somebody I hope I will never see again. But I will tell you, Senators, I am not here for any other reason than to say I had information that I thought would be of use to you. You have decided this information is useful, and when this process is over, except possibly talking to people as I leave this building, I hope to never have to talk about this again.
Good evening, Senators. Senator Thurman, see Senator Biden's seat is empty, and other distinguished members of the committee. My name is Carlton Stewart. I'm a graduate of Holy Cross College and the University of Georgia Law School. I was formerly House Counsel to Shell Oil Company in Houston, Texas, and Delta Airlines in Atlanta, Georgia, respectively. Additionally, I was a senior trial attorney with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission in Atlanta, Georgia, and later a special assistant to Judge Clarence Thomas in Washington. Subsequently, I was a partner in the law firm of Arrington and Hollowell in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm currently a principal in the Stewart firm in Atlanta, Georgia. As aforestated, I was a special assistant to Judge Clarence Thomas at the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission during much of the time that Anita Hill was employed there. At no time did I hear any complaints from Ms. Hill concerning sexual harassment. At no time during my tenure at EEOC did I observe or hear anything relative to sexual harassment by Judge Clarence Thomas. That in August of 1991, I ran into Miss Anita Hill at the American Bar Association convention in Atlanta, Georgia, whereupon she stated in the presence of Stanley Grayson how great Clarence's nomination was and how much he deserved it. We went on to discuss Judge Clarence Thomas and our tenures at EEOC for an additional 30 or so minutes. There was no mention of sexual harassment nor anything negative about Judge Thomas stated during that time.
Would you put a loudspeaker close to you so that people in the back can hear you?
Okay, I'll boom for you. I have known Judge Clarence Thomas for more than 30 years, and I find the allegations by Ms. Hill not only ludicrous, but totally inconsistent and an opposite to his principles and his personality. I'll shorten that so that we can get on with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of this Judiciary Committee. My name is Stanley E. Grayson. I reside in the city and state of New York. I am a vice president at the investment banking firm Goldman Sachs and Company. Immediately prior to joining Goldman Sachs approximately 20 months ago, I served as the deputy mayor for finance and economic development for the city of New York. I am a graduate of the University of Michigan Law School and the College of the Holy Cross. During the weekend of August 10th, 1991, while at the hotel and conference headquarters for the American Bar Association's convention in Atlanta, Georgia, I was introduced to Professor Anita Hill by Mr. Carlton Stewart. At this meeting, Ms. Hill, Mr. Stewart, and I sat and conversed for at least 30 minutes. During the course of our conversation, in the presence of Mr. Stewart, Ms. Hill expressed her pleasure with Judge Thomas's nomination and stated that he deserved it. During this time, Ms. Hill made no mention of any sexual harassment by Judge Thomas, nor did she in any way indicate anything that might call into question the character or fitness of Judge Thomas for the U.S. Supreme Court. To the contrary, she seemed to take great pride in the fact that she had been a member of Judge Thomas's staff at the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission.
Dean Kosey, let me just ask you a question here. There's references are made here in different statements about a period of time when Judge Thomas was visiting you and apparently staying at your home. There was a dinner where Professor Hill was invited, and a breakfast the next morning where Professor Hill was invited, as was Judge Thomas, then Chairman Thomas, and that she drove Judge Thomas to the airport. My recollection is that Professor Hill said that you asked her to do that. Do you recall those incidents, and did you ask her to do it? And if you did ask her to do it, did she leave any impressions, verbal or physical, that she didn't want to be with Judge Thomas or had any problem doing what you asked her to do, if you did ask her to take him to the airport? Do you remember the incident, first of all?
Oh, yeah. But you'd have to describe the setting to fully understand even the importance of your question. At that, you know, the part that offends me so much here is that Clarence Thomas has never been described. You say, who's the real Clarence Thomas? Well, the real Clarence Thomas is a warm, wonderful human being.
Yeah, I understand that.
Let me finish
just address the,
yes, I will
the
address
area, if you will,
and
please.
that he, at that breakfast, If you ever heard him laugh, it would vibrate this room. And Anita doesn't have just a modest little laugh either. And the two of them were just laughing, and it was laughing at laughing. The incidents that would bring up about the things they were privy to that I was not, but my wife and I would sit there and just watch these two people just enjoy one another, as you do when you're in his presence. When it ended, the time to go to the airport, whether I asked her to take him to the airport, I don't think it was that way. It was a question of his going to the airport, and she just said, well, I'll take him. And that's the way I recall it. But it was in a setting of convivial, joyous.
Of close friendship and respect
Oh,
between the
my,
two.
you'd have to have been there to understand.
Thank you, Dean, very much. Mr. Doggett, your affidavit is of interest, of course, because if you want to draw something from it, you can, and if you don't want to, you don't have to. One thing you can draw from it is that perhaps Miss Hill, when you knew her then, Miss Hill, or yes, when you knew her, she was not Professor Hill, I don't believe, somewhat fantasized as to a relationship that she thought she was going to have with you. Is that a fair observation or your interpretation?
That was the conclusion I came to in response to what I felt was an absolutely bizarre statement she made to me at her going-away party.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I have no further questions. Senator Thurman?
I've asked unsuspected profound questions of these witnesses.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have heard many impressive witnesses during the course of these proceedings, but I do not believe that we have heard any more impressive than this panel. I want to divide the first portion of 15 minutes into two segments. Professor Coffey and Mr. Doggett have both submitted affidavits which develop the statement of a fantasy on the part of Professor Hill, and I will examine both of them to see if there was any connection or any suggestion as to their use of the word fantasy, and I can see Professor Coffey moving forward to suggest to the contrary, but I'll come to that. But I first want to take up the testimony of Mr. Stewart and Mr. Grayson, because their testimony is much briefer, although by the time you finish your questioning tonight, you won't think so. Going to a very important conversation which was held very recently, according to the statements of Mr. Stewart and Mr. Grayson, in August of this year, and a subject that I questioned Professor Hill about in detail. Mr. Stewart, you've already testified, and the critical part of your statement, your affidavit, is as follows. In August of 1991, I ran into Ms. Hill at the American Bar Association convention in Atlanta, Georgia, whereupon she stated to me in the presence of Stanley Grayson, quote, how great Clarence's nomination was and how much he deserved it, close quote. Mr. Stewart, are you sure that's the essence of what Professor Hill told you?
Absolutely.
And Mr. Grayson's statement refers to the weekend of August 10th, 1991, at the American Bar Association convention in Atlanta, Georgia, where he says he was introduced to Professor Hill by Mr. Stewart. And this is his statement, quote, during the course of our conversation in the presence of Mr. Stewart, Ms. Hill expressed her pleasure with Judge Thomas's nomination and stated that, quote, he deserved it, close quote. Mr. Grayson, are you certain that Professor Hill said that?
Yes, I am, Senator.
Later, I'm going to come back to what Mrs. Hill said by way of denial, but for the point of the first 15 minutes, I want to move at this point to what Mr. Doggett and Professor Coffey have had to say. And Professor, I want to start because of limitation of time, and you will be expanding in great detail on your statement. And I want to turn to the statement which you submitted on October 7th and ask you if you have a copy of that with you.
No, I have the statement I submitted on October 10th.
Well, I've got...
I'm not interrupting on this, on an administrative matter.
Yes.
In light of the hour, do you mind if I make an announcement about the remainder of the witnesses that people may be interested in knowing?
I'd be glad to yield you, Mr. Chairman.
And I apologize, but this just has been decided. We only have now only one more panel of witnesses. Will be limited to an hour because I'd like to read to the committee a letter that I sent to after a number of conversations with my colleagues, Democrats and Republicans, and to Miss Wright, who was going to testify, or potentially going to had been subpoenaed, and to Miss Jordan, who was going to corroborate the testimony of Miss Wright. And this is the letter I telefaxed to her lawyer in the office in downtown Washington a few minutes ago after extensive negotiations and discussions with Democrats and Republicans and Ms. Wright's lawyer. Dear Ms. Wright, it is my preference that you testify before the Judiciary Committee in connection with the nomination of Judge Clarence Thomas. But in light of the time constraints under which the committee is operating and the willingness of all the members of the committee to have placed in the record of the hearing the transcripts of the interviews of you and your cooperating witness, Ms. Rose Jordan, Jourdain, conducted by the majority and minority staff, I am prepared to accede to the mutual agreement of you and the members of the committee, both Republican and Democrat, that the subpoena be vitiated. Thus, the transcribed interviews of you and Mrs. Rose Jordan will be placed in the record without rebuttal at the hearing. I wish to make clear, however, that if you want to testify at the hearing in person, I will honor that request. Signed, sincerely, Joseph R. Biden, Jr. Postscript on the bottom I attached from Angela Wright. I agree the admission of the transcript of my interview and that of Ms. Jordan's in the record without rebuttal at the hearing represents my position and is completely satisfactory to me. Translated. Ms. Wright and Ms. Jordan will not testify at the hearing. Their extensive interviews conducted by the majority and minority staff will be placed in the official record, available to all of our colleagues and to the press in the world, without rebuttal in the record, and that will, at least as far as this committee's investigation, at this moment of those two witnesses, end the matter. Now, and not end the matter in terms of judgment, end the matter in terms of witnesses. So we're taking extensive testimony placed in the record by both majority and minority at the request of Republicans and Democrats as well as the potential witness. That's why I vitiated the subpoena in spite of the fact I would have preferred her to be here, but in light of the time constraints, I did not insist that that be done. Now, that means for the remainder of the night, I hope this doesn't encourage people to go longer than they otherwise would. For the remainder of the night, the only witnesses remaining are the four distinguished gentlemen before us and a panel of 9 witnesses that are being produced by Judge Thomas, all women who worked in some capacity with him at I believe all of the EEOC. Don't hold me to that. It could be at education as well. Each will be, by previous unanimous consent agreement, limited precisely to 3 minutes, No more time will be allowed, and there will be 16 minutes aside to cross-examine if anybody wishes to do that. I say that to the press and others who have been here so long trying to determine what the remainder of the witness list is. I yield to my friend from Ohio.
Mr. Chairman, I certainly think we should conclude the hearing with respect to these witnesses, but I wonder whether, in view of the fact that it's now 11:30 at night, and the next 9 witnesses, of those 9, I think 7 of them are employed by the administration, either at the EEOC or the Labor Department or the Department of Education. And I think 2 of them, one's former Secretary, Senator Danforth, and one's former Chief of Staff to Clarence Thomas. I wonder, Mr. Chairman, if we couldn't stipulate that all of that testimony will be very supportive of Clarence Thomas. I don't think there's any argument about that. I don't know why there's any reason to have to hear it. And frankly, I think, in fairness to this committee and in fairness to the candidate, for that it would serve just the same purpose. We know what the testimony will be.
I appreciate the senator's request, and as I hear from one of my friends from the far west and my right, not far right, a deal is a deal. They will be heard unless they choose to decide, as 2 panels have on behalf of the witness, Miss Hill, unless they so choose, they will be heard because we have a unanimous consent agreement to do just that. Now, with that, I apologize to my friend from Pennsylvania. I hope someone's kept some notion of how much time does the senator have left? He has 9 minutes left. 6 minutes had expired when I interrupted. And you'll have time to come back if you wish.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I apologize, gentlemen, for the interruption.
Mr. Stewart, after Professor Hill said to you, quote, how great Clarence's nomination was and how much he deserved it, did you continue to have a discussion with Professor Hill?
Correct.
Was there any mention at all of any sexual harassment by Judge Thomas of Professor Hill?
No mention at all, Senator.
Or any other unfavorable conduct of Judge Thomas?
No, none at all, Senator.
And Mr. Grayson, after, as you have testified, Professor Hill said about Judge Thomas that he deserved it, referring to the Supreme Court nomination, was there any discussion by Mrs. Hill of anything derogatory about Judge Thomas?
No, Senator.
Is it Professor Coffey?
Well, you used the Pennsylvania Dutch pronunciation. Actually, it's Kofi.
Professor Kofi?
Kofi.
Professor Kofi?
Yeah.
I'd like you just to start, because time is limited, and I can assure you there'll be many questions on the body of your statement later, but because I want to move to Mr. Doggett in just a moment, I'd like you to just read the final paragraph of your statement of October 7th, if you would, please.
I've read it. I read it.
Would you read it, please?
Well, I find the references to the alleged sexual harassment not only unbelievable but preposterous. I'm convinced that such is the product of fantasy.
Professor Coffey, did anybody suggest to you that you use the word fantasy in describing Professor Hill's conduct?
No, and the second statement I made in October 10, I left that off. That wasn't intended as words of art or scientific expression. It was just the instant reaction I had to this awful event. When I heard that what the allegations were, my instant reaction was that just was unbelievable, preposterous. And then I said, it must be a product of fantasy. If you just knew these people and knew Clarence Thomas, you would know that that couldn't possibly have been true.
Well, Professor Coffey, was there anything that you could point to in Professor Hill's conduct which would lead you in either an evidentiary or a feeling way to that conclusion of fantasy?
No, I think perhaps my selection of words there was probably unfortunate. I've never seen Anita Hill in a situation where she wasn't a decent person, a dignified person, a jovial person. I've never seen her in a situation where actually you would say she was fantasizing in that sense. I'm almost regret that I'd used that in my first
Well, then how would you explain Professor Hill's charges against Judge Thomas in the context of your very forceful testimony in support of Judge Thomas?
There's just no way of explaining it. How she ever was inclined to make such an observation is something that's so totally beyond my comprehension. If you knew these two people as we all have known them, and then evaluate that or equate that in the context of what has been alleged here, it just couldn't be the same person, you wouldn't think.
Mr. Doggett, turning to your affidavit, and I'm going to ask you for the conclusions first before you comment on the substance of your statement. And permit me a comment. I found your testimony of your professional background enormously impressive. And let me now move to the last line in the third full paragraph where well, why don't you read the last sentence in the third full paragraph on page 2, if you would, please.
I came away from her going-away party feeling that she was somewhat unstable and that, in my case, she had fantasized about my being interested in her romantically.
And if you would now, Mr. Doggett, read the paragraph on page 3.
It was my opinion at the time, and is my opinion now, that Miss Hill's fantasies about my sexual interest in her were an indication of the fact that she was having a problem with being rejected by men she was attracted to. Her statements and actions in my presence during the time when she alleges that Clarence Thomas harassed her were totally inconsistent with her current descriptions and are, in my opinion, yet another example of her ability to fabricate the idea that someone was interested in her when, in fact, no such interest existed.
Mr. Doggett, while your testimony has already, in effect, answered this question, I want to ask you explicitly, did anyone suggest to you that you use the word fantasy in describing your conclusion about Professor Hill?
I talked to no one about my affidavit and the contents of my affidavit. I was quite frankly amazed when I heard the professor had used the same term. In fact, just to make it very clear, I have not talked to the judge. I have not talked to any of these witnesses. I have not talked to the women that preceded us.
Now, Mr. Doggett, what happened between you and Professor Hill which led you to conclude that she was fantasizing?
At a going-away party for Anita Hill, before she went to Oral Roberts University Law School, soon after I arrived, and relatively early in that going-away party, she asked me if we could talk in private. And I agreed, having no reason to see that that was inappropriate. And she talked to me like you would talk to a friend who you're going to give some advice to help them, quote, clean up their act. She said, something I want to tell you. And this is what I have quoted in my affidavit, and it's the only part of my affidavit that talks about her statements that is in quotes because it was emblazoned in my brain because it was such a bizarre statement for me. She said, I'm very disappointed in you. You really shouldn't lead women on or lead on women and then let them down. I came to a woman's going-away party who I really didn't know very well. She says, hey, let's talk in the corner, and she said, you've led me on. You've disappointed me. And it's like, what? Where is this coming from? I don't know about you, gentlemen. Washington, D.C. is a very rough town if you are single and you're a professional, for men and for women. Most people come here to be a part of the political process. They have legitimate, real ambitions, and it is a lonely town, a difficult town to get to know people because people are constantly coming in and coming out. I came to Washington, D.C. to be part of the business process. I was not interested in politics. I wanted to be an international management consultant. And the first time I met Anita Hill, I sensed that she was interested in getting to know me better, and I was not interested in getting to know Anita Hill. And based on my experience as a black male in this town, I did everything I could to try not to give her any indication that I was interested in her. And my affidavit talks about that in some detail. Even when I was jogging by her house and she said, "Hi, John," and we had a conversation, and she raised the issue of, well, since we are neighbors, why don't we have dinner? I tried to make it very clear that although I respected her as a person and as a fellow alumnus of Yale Law School, and as somebody I thought was very decent, the only relationship I was interested in was a professional relationship. And as I stated in my affidavit, she said, "Well, what would be a good time?" I was in my jogging clothes, and so obviously I don't have a calendar with me. And I said, "Well, I will check my calendar and I will get back to you." And I checked my calendar and I said, "Looks like Tuesday will work. You get back to me if that will work, and let's talk about a place." Later on, after that dinner agreement arrangement fell through, she gave me a call and said, "What happened?" I said, "What do you mean, what happened? I never heard from you." She said, "Well, I never heard from you." And apparently we both had expected the other person to call to confirm. At the end of that, "I never heard from you, I never heard from you," if I was interested in her, the logical response would have been, "Well, since we didn't get together this time, let's do it again." There was no response. And there was a very awkward, pregnant pause, and the conversation ended. And I never saw Anita Hill again until that going away party where she dropped that bombshell on me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'll come back in the next round.
Mr. Doggett, I don't doubt what you said. But I kind of find it equally bizarre that you would be so shocked. I mean, are you that? I mean, is it? Have you ever not wondered why you thought maybe when you called a woman, maybe it's never happened to you, but I know a lot of men who call a woman and ask her out, or ask to meet. Let me finish my comments here. Decide to have dinner, say, "Let's get together for dinner," but afraid to say fully, let's go out together to dinner. Let's get together. We live in the neighborhood. Let's go to dinner. And then that person call back, or you call again and speak to her again, and the date's set. And then, for whatever reason, she doesn't show up. Mm-hmm. You're still interested. You call back. You say, "How come you weren't there?" And you say, "Well, I thought that you were going to call, and you thought I was going to call, etc." And that goes back and forth. Then there's a pregnant pause. And you hang up. And I know some men, maybe I'm just accustomed to being, when I was younger, being turned down more than you were, but some men sit and say, "Geez, I wonder whether she's just bashful. That's why she did that. That was the reason for the pregnant pause. Or I wonder if she really wants me to call her back. She didn't say, 'Don't call me again.' She didn't say, 'I don't want to hear from you again.' Maybe." And then you see her a little while later at a party, and she's leaving town. And you walk up to her and you say, "Can I talk to you?" And she said, "Yeah." And you walk over to the corner of the party and say, "You really shouldn't let guys down like that. You led me to believe that you wanted to go out with me. You shouldn't do that to women. or to men. And if she turned around and said, "You're fantasizing. How could you ever think that? What an outrageous, you must be demented. You must be crazy." I don't think that's how normal people function. I mean, I don't doubt a word you said. But you go on and say, you said, "I'll check my calendar and get back to you." You check calendars, you got back to each other, the date fell, the date. We don't use dates these days, I know. The dinner fell through. You talk again and say, "What happened?" And you're silent, and she says, "What happened?" And you're silent, and you're saying, you did not say to her, did you? "Don't call me again. Don't pay attention to me. I may be a virile person, but don't pay any attention. Just stay away from me." You didn't say anything like that, did you?
I sure wish I had, Senator.
Well, I wish you had too, because maybe there wouldn't be this confusion. She may not be telling the truth, but how one can draw the conclusion from that kind of exchange that this is a woman who is fantasizing. This is a woman who must have a problem because she's turned... Are you a psychiatrist?
Senator, I'm trying to follow your question.
No, are you a
but I may have
psychiatrist?
to
No,
ask
my
you to
question is,
restate
are you a
it.
psychiatrist?
Absolutely not.
Are you a psychologist?
Absolutely not.
Well, how from that kind of exchange can you draw the conclusion that she obviously has a serious problem, that she... Where is the section I want to find here in your statement? You were stunned by her statement. You told her her comments were totally uncalled for and completely unfounded. Balderdash. I reiterated that I had never expressed a romantic interest in her. Had done nothing to give her any indication he might romantically be interested in the future. I also stated the fact that I lived 3 blocks away from her, but never came over. Should have led her to believe something.
Pardon?
I mean...
I didn't hear what you just said, sir.
The implication is that should have led her to understand that you weren't interested in her. Did she come up to you and say, in mildly hysterical terms, "Why have you not called me?" Or did she just make the statement straight, monotone? You shouldn't lead somebody on like that. Or whatever the precise statement was. Can you characterize the way she said it? Did she say, "I'm very disappointed in you. You really shouldn't lead women on like that," and then let them down? Or did she say, "Why did you do this? I'm very disappointed in you"? I mean, can you characterize what it was like?
She was very, very intense, Senator. This was not...
Describe for me how intense she was. Was her voice at a higher octave than normal?
She seemed very upset to me.
Was her voice at a higher octave than normal, you recall?
She seemed very upset to me, Senator. Senator, my statement, my conclusion is based on a year and a half of experience, not just one afternoon jog on a Saturday in 1983.
Well, tell me what else she ever said to you.
Okay, examples. And that's a very fair question, Senator.
Thank you.
Because the first time I went over to Clarence Thomas's office. Okay, the question is, what else did she say to me?
What else did she ever say to you? Yeah.
A, she called me after the dinner fell through. I didn't call her. B, there were a number of months that went...
Let's stop there a minute. Wouldn't that lead you to believe that maybe she thought you might be interested, or a woman wouldn't put her ego on the line to call
Absolutely, Senator.
Right.
And what I've tried to say, and what I'm trying to say right now, is that I did everything in my power with Professor Hill over the time I knew her to make it absolutely, positively clear that I was not interested in that woman.
Did you say that to her? Did you say, "Professor Hill, look, Anita, I just want to be clear before we get things out of hand here. I want to make it clear to you. I think you're a wonderful person, but I have absolutely no interest in you in anything other than professional."
There is never a need to do that because we never got to the level where I had given her enough encouragement where she felt that it was appropriate to ask me out
give me
for a
more
date.
instances where she said things to you that this wasn't just the one instance where she said, you led me on or you led women on. Tell me another
Well, I
instance.
think a perfect example of the conclusion that I came to when I was sitting at my computer in Austin, Texas, was the statement she gave under oath before you 2 days ago that she had dated John Carr, and the statement that John Carr gave under oath today that he would not characterize their relationship as a dating relationship.
Wait a minute. John Carr said he went out with her.
That's right. And she, I believe, as I understand
she
it...
said dated.
Pardon?
Well, I'm worried about your instances. What did she ever say to you, that led you to believe that she, in fact, had a clear understanding that you had no interest? I mean, you said, there are other instances other than this occasion where she said to you, I'm very disappointed in you. You really shouldn't lead on women and then let them down.
Right.
What else did she ever do or say?
Nothing else, Senator. And if she
That's
had...
it.
Absolutely, Senator. And if she hadn't said it and hadn't been upset to some degree when
Now, how was
she
she
said
upset
Let
again?
him get through. Let him get through.
Okay.
Let him answer.
it was she was intense. I do not believe she raised her voice, but this was not just, hey guy, be careful as you characterized it. This clearly bothered her. And I hear what you're saying, Senator, and I respect your opinion, and I'm not trying to argue with you, but for me, at that time, in that room, that shocked me. And maybe it would not have shocked you, it shocked me.
Well, I appreciate that. I do appreciate that. I sincerely do. Let me tell you what I thought when I first was told about this.
Okay.
I thought it was the case of a woman walking up to someone she never had spoken to, other than in passing business, watched him jog, said hello to him, and then all of a sudden at a going-away party walked up and called him aside and said, I don't know why you led me on like this. That to me, if a woman did that to me, I may either think she's nuts or be flattered, but I would wonder, at a minimum, I'd walk away going, where did that come from? But if a woman, whether she called me or I called her, if I had agreed on one occasion to go to dinner with her, if I had known that if I felt she had an interest in me, if the dinner date was broken, if she called me to ask me why, if I said nothing and remained silent, didn't say, look, I just don't want to go out to dinner with you, if I just was polite and said nothing, and then she came up to me and said that one sentence, I don't know how, quite frankly, a reasonable man could conclude from that to be stunned and shocked that this woman is fantasizing because she has a male complex. What was your phrase? Where's the phrase about complex? Come on, staff, earn your salary. There's some place in there where you say that this must mean this is a complex from being rejected by men. You say, the fact you believe Miss Hill's fantasies about my sexual interest in her were an indication of the fact she was having a problem with being rejected by men she was being attracted to. It seems to me that is a true leap in faith or ego, one of the two. No, I'm not.
Well, then let's stop the crowd from responding. You've done that before, and they've responded about 6 times.
I've usually, if anyone else responds, they're out. The reason I probably didn't is I'm so intensely involved in this, I didn't do that. Please, if anyone else responds, I ask the police officers to move them out. I mean that sincerely. I just truly, look.
Would you like me to respond
I'd
to
like
your,
you to say anything you want.
your question,
I mean, I
sir?
truly would, because I'm having trouble understanding this one, and I won't say any more.
I understand
Now
that.
take your time and say what you please.
Thank you, sir.
As long as you want.
I appreciate your concern.
My confusion, not concern.
I assumed you were concerned also.
No, I'm not concerned.
I appreciate your confusion. I will do what I can to try to clarify it. A, I clearly reacted to this event differently than you would, and I respect our differences in opinions. B, there were a number of occasions where Gil Hardy and others who were black Yale Law School graduates made an attempt to bring together those of us who were in town, including people like me who were not practicing law and who were not involved in the political process, so that we could have social fellowship. We had parties and other get-togethers. I observed from a distance, and I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not an expert, I'm just a man, Anita Hill attempting to be friendly with men, engage them in conversation, initiate conversation, elongate conversations, and people talking with her and eventually going away.
Can you name any of those men for us, for the record?
Sir, 8, almost 9 years have gone by. If she had filed a sexual harassment
No, that's
charge,
not the issue.
I would be able to do that because we would be in 1983 or 1984, given the statute of limitations, which is why you have created a statute of limitations. It's too long. I cannot. I also remember, sir, the first time I went to Clarence Thomas' office, I was going to talk to somebody who was a classmate of mine about why he had become a black Republican Reaganite, because I had some real concerns. And as I went into his outer office, Anita Hill happened to walk by, and she tried to stop me and engage me in conversation and acted as though she thought that since we were all black Yale Law School graduates, I should say, well, let's go in and talk with Clarence, which I did not. Clearly, people can disagree as to whether or not my observations and conclusions are ones that they would make. But I assure you that based on my experiences and my observations of Anita Hill, both in terms of how she related to me, and let's talk about the jogging incident, Senator. When I was running by, I was timing myself on my watch, and my interest was to run in place for maybe 30 seconds, be polite, and keep going. The reason we continued to talk was because she wanted me to continue to talk. That is action on her part, sir.
Can I ask you a question? Why didn't you keep running?
Because the group of black Yale Law School graduates is a very small, a very close, and a very special group. And it is like a family. Gil Hardy, the man who introduced Anita to Clarence Thomas, was one of the leaders of that group. We did what we could to be as supportive as possible. Senator, I graduated in 1972. She graduated in 1980. She was significantly younger than me. She seemed to be lonely in this town. I was not going to try to make this woman feel that I was not going to be straightforward with her as a professional. There have been other women who have made it very clear they have been interested in me, and I said, I am not interested. Anita Hill did nothing to deserve me to slam the door in her face. She was one of the Yale Law School black fraternity, and there are very few of them, Senator. Now, I agree that others may interpret my conclusions differently, but that's how I saw it, and that's why I said what I said.
I appreciate that, and I thank you very much. Dean, did you work for Clarence? The first time I knew this, I should have read the record more closely. Did you work for Clarence Thomas when you spent most time with Anita Hill, Professor Hill? Were you in his employ?
Well, no, I have to say it this way. I worked for Clarence Thomas after I worked with Anita Hill. She was a professor on our faculty, and when I retired as dean, I became a special assistant to Clarence Thomas, I think in large part through what she did in initiating our arrangement.
Thank you. Now, from your testimony, I got the impression, though, that the time you spent the most time with Anita Hill was in setting up that conference you referred to on harassment. You indicate, well, let me not say most time. You said there was a conference you were setting up on harassment, and Anita Hill was participating in that. And you were surprised that if she had been harassed, she would have said something to you at that time. Were you working for the man that she allegedly harassed her when you were surprised she didn't say something to you about harassment?
Yes, sir. It was in 87, and I had already been working with Thomas then a couple of years.
Talk in the machine so everybody can hear you.
All right. Yes, I had been working with Chairman Thomas at that time of probably 2 years.
Yeah. So I want to just make sure I understand. You made a statement which I thought was fairly powerful and obviously accurate. You said that one of the things that you pointed to as evidence of the fact that Anita Hill assertions are probably not true is that with regard to a conference on harassment, she worked with you in setting that up. And you said, and I'm paraphrasing, if she had been harassed, why would she not say to me that she had been harassed when the purpose we were getting together for was to discuss harassment? And I ask you, in light of the fact you worked for the man who allegedly harassed her, would it surprise you that she would not confide in you? Sir, I mean that sincerely.
Well, precisely, and that's what I said in my opening statement.
I didn't understand that. Thank you.
How could it possibly be that a person was talking to me about being a featured speaker on a subject of sexual harassment and never, ever have said, I have been harassed, I have been exposed to this, I know it from personal experience?
Right.
Never, ever.
Now, what I'm saying, Dean, as a trained lawyer, does it surprise you that a person who says they were harassed now would not say to you she was harassed when she would then have to tell you that the man who harassed her was your boss?
It not only surprises me, it completely confounds me. How could it possibly be that a person as intelligent, as decent, as dignified as this young woman was could talk to me about having a program on sexual harassment and never say, I personally have experienced it?
Well, I thank you very much. My time is up. I yield to Senator Thurman.